everybody's dad and uncle. They think that the seller is the enemy. The seller is the adversary. That's who we're up against. They're the only person who has what we want. They are our best friend.
Welcome back to the Modern Agent Podcast. My name is Logan Ricchetti with Modern Realty. This podcast is a combination of thoughts and opinions on the real estate market in Midland, Michigan with our local real estate agents from Modern Realty. Our mission is to create informed and confident buyer and seller clients, so tune in to learn more about Midland's real estate market.
Hello and welcome to the Modern Agent Podcast. My name is Kevin Crampton and this is Cheri Hitchcock. And how are you?
Doing great.
Good.
Excited to talk about this today.
Yeah.
Recently, I find myself appreciating the different stages in life that are the driving forces when you're buying a home. So I thought we could break those down and provide some of our insight on how we help clients determine what would best fit their needs.
Yeah.
But before we do that, let's address this NAR settlement and the impact that it's had on a buyer.
The hot potato.
Yeah.
The elephant in the room. So for anybody that doesn't know what we're talking about, there was a lawsuit settlement between the National Association of Realtors and the attorneys that were alleging that realtors were colluding and price fixing, essentially. So what you have in the market now, in the vast research that I have done, it kind of misleads people on what truly is going on, what is actually the fact. It's actually almost nothing has changed from my perspective. It's certainly almost nothing will change as far as what I do moving forward. So the two major changes is the first one is that a listing agent can no longer advertise the split, the compensation that will go out to a buyer's agent in the MLS. The seller has the exact same options as they always have. A seller could always opt out of using a real estate agent altogether. Mm-hmm. A seller could always negotiate how much they were willing to pay. There's really nothing that has changed as far as that goes. They still have all of the same options as they always have. So that's the biggest thing that I'm seeing in terms of kind of misleading information. I've not seen anything personally in the media that has not made this huge deal out of it, as if you could never negotiate with a real estate agent. So that's the first thing. The second thing, and I haven't seen any media doing a lot of big stories about this, and I think this is a much bigger change, is that now a buyer has to formally hire a buyer's agent prior to viewing homes in person in most cases. I think this is good in a lot of ways, and I think it's not good in some ways. They are making it out to be as if there was no transparency in real estate. I don't know about you, but my entire career, the first thing that I've always taught my buyer clients, especially first-time home buyer clients, is how I'm compensated. It's a huge part of the equation, and they need to understand how they can hire me and how that compensation works. So for me, nothing is going to change in terms of my operations as it relates to transparency. The big change is that my entire career, I have never asked my clients to sign an exclusive buyer brokering agreement. I've never asked my clients to sign a contract in order to hire me. I've always gone with a handshake style agreement between my client and myself, and that agreement is that I work my butt off to be their buyer's agent, and they work exclusively with me in exchange for that. I've always been perfectly happy with a handshake style agreement, but unfortunately, that is no longer an option for buyer clients. Now there will have to be a stipulated amount of compensation going to a buyer's agent, and that's what is going to have to happen moving forward. So what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I agree. On the seller
matter?
side, I think that everything is still negotiable, and it is our best way to represent them is to bring as many offers and as much viewing, showing, attention we can bring to their listing. And in that case, if they're covering the buyer's agent side of the commission, they'll have better offers to choose from, likely yield a higher. But I've had some buyers be a little nervous. And I, like you, have never asked anyone to sign anything more than a loyalty agreement. I don't even really have them sign a loyalty agreement every time.
Yeah.
And I've had a much more, clients know they can come to me if they're curious about a home and maybe they want to dip their toe in the water. But it's made them a little more nervous formally looking and knowing that they need to hire someone. So I think it's up to us to explain what each of those things mean to them. And as well, I think it's important to really highlight what the benefits of having a buyer's agent work for you are.
Yeah.
So why don't you hit some of those highlights for us?
Yeah. I think moving forward, the decision of who you hire as your buyer's agent is going to be more critical than ever, because as a buyer, you're going to be having a more firm commitment to that agent, which is a good thing in a lot of ways. But it does emphasize that hiring decision in making sure that you have an agent that knows exactly what they're doing, that you have an agent that is going to be available, is going to be a high-level negotiator, is going to have a good reputation. All of these different things are going to come into play and be more important than ever. That's a good thing. And you're right. When it comes to a seller, again, they have all of the exact same options as they always have. And the reason that the industry standard was as it was is because, like you said, they have the ability to control the demand. They have the ability to actually affect the supply and demand equilibrium in a good way and in a bad way. If a seller decides, I do not want to offer compensation to buyer's agents, they are affecting the demand.
Absolutely.
Because now these buyers are contractually in alliance with their buyer's agent. That's going to be a major catalyst to their buying decision. So if in the event that's what you decide to do, if you're a seller, you are alienating
Absolutely.
a massive portion of the buyer pool, which is not something that is as advantageous as you think it would be. What's going to be left in the buyer pool in many cases is going to be predatory buyers, cash buyers, people like that. These people that buy houses without buyer's agents, generally speaking, are very experienced buyers, and not necessarily going to be the most advantageous buyer to you in some cases, most cases, I would say. So it's important that sellers understand that as well. On the other side, you can positively impact the demand by making your listing as appealing as possible to as many buyers as possible. This is going to drive the highest degree of traffic. This is going to drive the best offers. This is going to, in most cases, drive the highest net sales price. Again, nothing is changing for the seller in terms of what their options are. The only real change as it relates to the NAR settlement, which is a hot potato because everybody's talking about it. A year from now, nobody will even be talking about it. But that's what's going on. The big change is that a buyer's agent now has to, by law, has to formally hire their buyer's agent prior to.
And even though it's a new change, we really expect that 9 out of 10 transactions would remain the same as they always have.
Yeah.
And that will be our job to educate and to explain and to negotiate the best deal for the buyer that we're representing.
Yeah. Yep.
So let's say I've got my buyer's contract signed and I'm ready to start looking for a house. Let's go back and break down some of those stages. I'm a first-time home buyer and I have a lot of high expectations and I might not have a high budget. Let's talk about some of the things that could potentially be important for a first-time home buyer to consider.
Well, obviously, outside of the buyer agent decision, I think more than ever, and partly with the new rules, but also just economic conditions, the days of being able to purchase a house with little or no money are probably in the rearview mirror. It's harder than ever to do that. I can remember early in my career, over a decade ago, where you could buy a house. I mean, it was a realistic prospect that you could purchase a house with almost no money down. I've had clients buy a house and actually get money at closing, believe it or not. In some scenarios, I think those days are probably in the past. My buyers, clients that I'm representing, one of my biggest pieces of advice is save your pennies, save everything that you can. Stash it away because you're probably going to need it to be able to compete against the other buyers, because that's really who your competition is. You are not in competition with sellers. But everybody's dad and uncle, they think that the seller is the enemy. The seller is the adversary. That's who we're up against. They're the only person who has what we want. They are our best friend. We are in competition with the other buyers. So you got to have a little bit of capital up front. I think as first-time home buyers, you got to understand the process before you start. Get yourself with a good agent that's going to teach you about what the process is going to be like. Be mentally prepared. It is a rocky road sometimes. It's not all fun and games always. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's great, and most times it has good and bad.
It is an exciting time, but it's also one of the major milestones of things that you'll do in your life. You get married. My son recently got married, and they put all their money that they received as a wedding gift into a fund to buy a house. And then they started thinking about, what's the house that we're going to buy? So I started asking a lot of questions. And I said, the next natural step is, let's talk with a lender and let's do a pre-qualification and determine what you're able to buy. And then what does that monthly payment look like? And then what does it look like? I'm guessing you'll do a 30-year mortgage. Are we adding children in the next 30 years? I hope so. That will involve daycare.
Right.
And what are the logistics look like for where I want to live and my commute to work? So many things to factor in, but getting that pre-qualification, I feel, is a next important step that our agents will help recommend good people to do a pre-qualification for you, determine what that money looks like that you're going to need out of pocket to put down, and what else? What's the next thing?
Yeah.
So we've got a buyer's agent. We understand the benefits. We've done a pre-qualification, and I have some money in my bank account. I think I'm ready.
Ready to pound pavement is probably what you're getting at. So yeah, then would come the home searching process, and what we're talking about is that the home buying process is a sequential process that happens in 6 phases, and those phases are in a specific order. That order is to prepare, search, offer, finance, due diligence, and close. We've been teaching our clients this forever and ever. So what we've discussed so far is the preparation process. So then becomes the searching process. And again, this is impacted in the sense that is going to change just a little bit. But things that I recommend that my clients consider, and I want to hear what you recommend, are the first thing is location. Proximity to work, school districts, all of these things are very important.
I agree. I tell my clients the one thing you can't change about a house is its location.
Exactly. It's the ultimate unchangeable. If you purchase a house on a 5-lane highway, you will never not live on a 5-lane highway as long as you live in that house.
And if it was a high consideration for you when you were purchasing, when it comes time to sell it, it's going to be a consideration for the next buyer.
Exactly. It directly, maybe as much or more than anything, impacts the marketability, which adversely impacts the value, the location, overall amenities, fit, finish, all of these different things. What are your expectations in terms of what your budget is as it relates to what you need? So the searching process is a collaborative process that you and your agent, because it's 2024, I tell this story all the time. When I bought my very first house in 2010, I had a real estate agent. I didn't own a computer. I didn't own a smartphone. I didn't have the internet. I had no clue what was up. My agent's job was to feed me houses. Not anymore. Now everybody has a computer. Everybody has the internet. Everybody has access to the inventory that's in the market.
And they're fairly obsessed with stalking it.
Yes, yeah, for sure. But that's the difference of the culture. So the value of your real estate agent isn't as, focused on that value proposition as it used to be. So I also tell my clients, the home searching process is a collaborative effort. Me, you, your grandma, everybody, we're all looking for houses, and we can all pretty much see, for the most part, most of the same houses.
I do, very similar. I like them to identify the needs up front. Like, what are the boxes that we know we absolutely have to check? What are the non-negotiables for us? And then what are the things that I would really want? And what are the things that I would really like? If it's something like I have a dog and I need a fence because my dog is a Siberian Husky and it runs away, can I put in a fence, or do I need to get a house with a fence? So those are the types of things that we look at. I think one thing for first-time home buyers, though, is they get really excited and they want to buy the HGTV ready home.
Yeah.
And our market is priced higher now. Or some of them have parents that got a good deal on a house. And so their parents are weighing in and saying, well, that's not worth that. Well, we know that the industry is up a little bit right now. And so I like to make sure that they understand the opportunity that you have more ways that you can pay down the equity in this home besides just paying your monthly mortgage. Is there an opportunity for you to improve the house? And can we look for something that has some cosmetic opportunities? Is it foundationally solid and sound? If it needs a new roof, at some point in a 30-year mortgage, we're gonna have to put a roof on that house. Where do we want it to fall in the stage of where are we most prepared for it to fall within that mortgage period? So those are some of the things that I consider. And I also have this thing. I don't like to write an offer on a house that I couldn't see myself living in. I have a hard time putting a client in there. So I want to understand their needs and what their must-haves are, and then find them a home that they have opportunity. And always consider, especially with a first-time home buyer, it's probably not their forever home. So I want them to look at, is this a 5-year house? Is it a 10-year house? Do I want to be here 15 years? And what will it look like, how I grow within that next number of years?
Yeah. Yeah. And what I always tell people, what you're talking about, we call the needs versus wants list. I always tell my clients to formulate a list of amenities and offerings that you would not consider any house that didn't offer every single thing on that list. This is going to be the best way to eliminate anything that's just not going to meet the vision. And then tell me, hey, Kev, I would purchase a house that didn't have a fireplace, but I love a fireplace. I always wanted a fireplace. That way I know in my mind, it's going to trigger me to think of you when I see something. But there's no sense in looking at 2-bedroom houses if you would never consider looking at a 2-bedroom house. All it's going to do is muddy the waters and make it hard. So if you're at home formulating your needs versus wants list, remember that your needs list is a list of things that you would not consider purchasing any home that didn't offer every single thing on that list. And generally that's going to be a short list. It's going to be a couple of absolute deal breaker items, and then move on from there. So part of the conversation that we wanted to talk about today was the fact that there's all of these different stages of life and different needs for rehousing that a lot of people never really think of, but we deal with it every single day. We've been talking about first-time home buyers. There's first-time home buyers, and then the next logical step is on to the growing family or the upgrading family that we like to refer. This is the first time you need to buy a house and sell a house at the same time, which is a completely different dynamic. Sometimes you do this 1 or 2 times before you get into the empty nester phase of life, and we deal with those all the time. There's things like divorces, estates, second homes, vacation homes, and all these different kind of scenarios that, again, we see all the time, but most people never really think of it until they're into that phase of life. So what would be the next logical one?
Well, the next logical one is I've outgrown my starter home. And I am now looking at my family is growing. There are the staples that are still important, like we just discussed. Location is still vital and important, probably even more so now, because I need to think about, well, maybe I need more bedrooms and I need more room and I need a neighborhood for my kids to play in, but how are they getting to school? And what does that commute look like? I learned a long time ago that if you live within the city of Midland, and you're within 2 miles, you're considered a walker to your school district. That was great when my kids went to Woodcrest, Then when they went to Jefferson Middle School, it was 1.9 miles across Eastman Road. And I became a parent waiting in the drop-off line, trying to get to work on time. So is busing important? Is the commute? Are they involved in after-school activities? And we found that once we moved into town, we had lots of friends to carpool with. We didn't have that when we lived 10 minutes outside of town. And so the location is still the same. The considerations and the needs are still the same. I think we have to lead them through what's the best case scenario. Do I sell my home first? Can I buy before I sell?
Yeah.
All of those things are so important and tricky. And what resources can we tap into to make those moves possible?
Yeah, and that's a huge point. When you the first time you enter into this segment, the reason why I said that it's this is the first time that you start to look at the fact that you have to sell a house and buy a house at the same time, and how different it is than the first time that you bought a house. So mainly you have 4 options. You can buy now, sell later, sell now, buy later, buy contingent to sale, which is just contingent is a fancy word for if, or you could buy concurrent to the sale of your house. So I'm not going to break down all of those options. Those are your main options, and the logistics become a lot more challenging. Challenging, but you need to be a little more thoughtful this time around. I don't know about you, but when I was buying in this phase of my life, moving my equity from my starter home into my next home made me a lot more picky, about fit, finish, location. It seems like when I was buying my first home, my starter home, where, I kind of started my adult life, I was just looking for anything that was kind of good and would work and I could afford,
right.
Which back then was about $65,000. But
I think that was my first house, $67,000.
60, yeah. So, but when I was buying my next house, and now, of course, my equity is grown and that kind of thing. That was not the mindset that I was in personally. I was a lot more picky. I was looking for something that was very much different than that. So, you see a lot of home buyers and sellers starting to, be a lot more thoughtful.
Absolutely. I remember it was 28 years ago when we went into that growing family stage for us. And I remember my minimum criteria was a minimum of 1,800 square feet. I needed 4 bedrooms. I needed more than 1 toilet. I needed a garage, and I wanted to be close to the schools. And those were the things that we considered at that time.
Yeah. So the next phase of the life cycle, what are we? The retirement and empty nester home.
That's me. I'm the empty nester now. So we sold our family home because my husband wanted to walk out the back door and go fishing. And so we bought a home. And at the time I thought, this house is bigger. When everyone comes home for Christmas and for holidays, I'm going to have room for everyone to sit in the same room. And when all the kids come home and spend the night, we've got a lot of room for everybody to be there. Well, that's great for the 5 holidays or 6 times a year that everyone comes home. And then I found myself cleaning too many square feet every day. For the other 360 days a year, I'm cleaning 3,000 square feet.
Yeah.
And my husband's working in the yard all day, every day. And so the maintenance became maybe more than we wanted. And we find ourselves back to reconsidering.
Yeah. And you do see that. And a lot of the time, it's the maintenance has empty nesters starting to think condos. So if you don't know what a condo entails, a condominium, essentially what you're buying deeded ownership, but what you're actually purchasing is the airspace inside the dwelling. So it lets you off the hook from the maintenance. Of course, you still got to clean it, but it lets you off the hook for the snow removal and the lawn care and the exterior maintenance, the roof, all of these different things. You no longer have to worry about. Of course, in many cases, you pay a premium per square foot, which is the trade-off. And almost always, you're going to pay a homeowner association fee, which is going to pay to offset the cost of all of the different things. But yeah, a lot of the time you'll see the people who have the 1,800-foot 4-bedroom houses, these type of things, once the kids are grown and moving on and starting their own families, and it's just you guys at home reducing the square footage because you're reducing the footprint of your family.
Now we've collected so many things. We still need a basement.
Yeah,
a lot of
that's
condos have
a
a
whole
basement.
nother
We
thing.
still need a lot of that storage. I think some of the benefits or what attracts people to that condo living would be maybe that frees me up for more travel, or perhaps I want seasonal travel and I want to have a second home or something in a warmer climate. And so I'm not worrying about someone that is taking care of the outdoor maintenance for my condo life. But then there are the trade-offs. So another benefit might be the smaller community. There could be some amenities within a community. I think we find those to be more common in the southern communities. Like maybe there's a tennis center or a pool or other things in those condo associations. But maybe I can't it's not as easy to take my dogs, or I'm not ready for that yet because I still have dogs and need a fenced yard. So there may be more restrictions in some of those communities where we can't necessarily put up a fence, for example.
Yeah. And condos are great, and they're great in this situation. And I would argue to say that almost always it's this type of situation when I represent a client who's purchasing a condo or a co-op or something to that effect. But this also, a lot of the time, these are where the 2-bedroom homes are sold. Mm-hmm. These are where the smaller, may in some cases be considered starter homes. A lot of the time, first-time home buyers are actually competing against these type of buyers, which objectively, generally might put a first-time home buyer at a disadvantage because they're usually not as capital intensive as somebody that's in this phase of their life and at this point to be going through the empty nester situation.
Sure. So we still see the same themes in terms of location is still important. Things to factor. How close do I want to be to my family? How close am I to the grocery store? Can I eat dinner out if I want? The location hasn't changed. That has stayed steadily through each of our phases. And then the affordability still prime consideration in every single stage that we've talked about. What should that monthly payment look like? Do I need to increase, decrease? And then what does everyday life look like? We want people to be happy every day that they pull into their driveway and that they live in their homes. And so the other thing I guess we could also touch on is, do I want a second home? Mm-hmm. And what does that look like? We've recently learned that it's a little more expensive to have a second home. So interest rates are higher. There's an uptick if that's not your primary home. Taxes could potentially be higher. What does a second home look like? Is it in another state where I want a warmer climate, or is it I want to be on a lake and have a place for my family to gather and hang out and enjoy boating and swimming and fishing in the summers? So what are some of your perspectives if you've got clients looking for second homes?
Yeah, when you are considering a second home, you like you said, you are going into a whole different set of criteria. Like you said, a second home, you're only allowed to accept a homestead tax exemption on one property in the state of Michigan. Generally, it's going to be on your principal residence because usually that's the more expensive of the houses that you own. So you're going to pay a higher tax rate, which is a major catalyst for most people, depending on where you're buying. If you're buying in a place like Traverse City or something like that, not only are the prices at extreme premiums in that market,
as the taxes are as well.
The taxes are as well because the taxes are driven from value. So that's a big consideration when a buyer client is considering a second home. Like you said, location, proximity to whatever it is that you feel the need to be closer to. For a lot of people in our state where we live, it's water, whether it be inland water or waterways like rivers and things like that, or big, massive lakes like the Great Lakes where we live. These are all things that are going to impact the decision-making process when it comes to a second home, or what is it that you're attracted to in terms of activities? If it's not water, Kirsty and I went up to the UP, and we were fortunate enough to be able to lodge in this area where a whole bunch of her family's friends all had these little cabins. in the middle of absolutely nowhere that was their vacation homes because they were extremely into snowmobiling, which was really cool. But I'm sure the real estate there was much less demand for that type of activity. But if I'm really into snowmobiling, the point that I'm getting to is I probably don't feel the need to pay an extreme premium to live in Traverse City, to have a vacation home. So, yeah, and also just generally speaking, these type of homes are more expensive. But yeah, again, another phase of life, another scenario where it completely changes the entire dynamic, the entire search criteria, the entire thought pattern and mental headspace of where you're at when you're going through that process. And as always, making sure that you're hiring an agent that has experience.
So the average person will change homes about every 12 years, would you say?
Yeah, probably on average over their entire life cycle.
And so we've walked through each of those stages today. We know that this market is strong. It will continue to get stronger, that life isn't going to stand still, and neither are our housing needs. And so it's been fun talking about each of these stages. Every situation, I think every client is unique. I worked with someone recently where they went from that first home to my family grew, and we made the decision that they needed to sell first. That's how we were going to do this. And so we talked about, well, what are our options? And they said, well, I'm going to live with family. And I said, all right, well, the next price range we're going into may be really competitive. So I need to know that if we live with family for the next 6 months, it takes that long. You don't hate me in the end. And we walked through it. We waited. We had patience. We found the perfect home for them. And I think that's what's so important about having a buyer's agent is they will understand what are the most important factors to you, your needs, your family, and help match that for you.
Yeah, and making sure that your buyer's agent is setting realistic expectations, not to protect them, but to assist you in making critical decisions. I tell all of my clients when I first meet with them, I'm not always going to tell you what you want to hear, but I promise I will always teach you what you need to know. And if I'm telling you something that you don't want to hear, it's not something that I'm saying for fun. It's because you need to know it. It's going to be a major, thing that's going to come into play when you're making decisions as you go through the process. Like you said, if you didn't tell me that, and I get to a point where I decide, I'll just, how long could this take? It's not going to take that long. I'll go live with my parents for a little period of time. Now I'm 6 months into the process, directly impacting my quality of life in a major way. That doesn't help me at all. Matter of fact, it makes the process a lot more miserable, where if I knew that up front, again, why hiring your buyer's agent first is so important, and why having somebody who knows what they're doing is so important, and having somebody that's going to guide you through the process, create confident, informed buyer and seller clients, which is our mission. It's more important than ever for any buyer at any phase of their life and in any scenario that they're going through in their next home buying journey.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think the most important takeaway today is hire an agent that will respect your needs, your choices, and guide and educate you through every stage.
Yeah. So I guess that's it for the Modern Agent Podcast. I'm Kevin. This is Cheri, and thanks for watching.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Modern Agent Podcast. Please follow at Modern Realty Midland on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And if you need to buy or sell a house, please reach out to Modern Realty by going to www.modernrealty.us. Modern Realty, your home, our focus.